Alice, where is my daughter?
Your daughter? You don't have one, Mr. Holmes. You never did.
Holmes, stop that!
So I just finished playing Sherlock Holmes, The Devil's Daughter, and it was actually supposed to be one of those shitty games reviewed kind of reviews. Was actually expecting very little from this game because it is a low budget game and stuff, and well, it is not, because the game is actually good. I ultimately enjoyed it. It does have its flaws, and I'll address them here, but all in all, I actually found the game to be quite good. It was good. I enjoyed it. So as always, I'm gonna start with the bad things because, you know, why not? That's how I'm doing things. So one of the first things that will strike you is, since it's a low budget game, is that the animations are gonna be pretty choppy, you know, stiff. Many of the characters feel like they're stick puppets, you know, being moved by an invisible hand that's playing with them. Especially the ones that are that are NPCs are really stiff. And you know, you have a few more key characters. They're animated much better, but the ones you just see on the street are very stiff. So that's something I didn't like it. You get to meet Sherlock Holmes's adoptive daughter, and something that I just found very strange is that she's hideously ugly. Honestly, the only reason why I would say that that's even a female is because they give her a long braid, and he claims that that's his daughter. Otherwise, I would just assume it's really ugly boy. It seems like they're not very good at rendering these faces for children, and I can imagine that. That's how it's with many games, but it seems that they have a harder time rendering girls, because Sherlock Holmes has contact with other children, especially one that's like almost as an assistant of his, you know, a kid who does different odd jobs for him. And this kid is obviously male, and it looks much more normal. I mean, it's not good looking, but it doesn't have to be. The point is that it doesn't look weird. Well, this girl looks like she just either really ugly or just weird. There's something about her that I don't like. Now, something else that really disturbed me, actually, and that's a real criticism here, is that the game tends to, for whatever reason, skip moments. For example, right at the beginning of the game, at some point you decide that you want to go to a forest to check something out, and then the game skips to you suddenly running in the forest being shot at, which is very weird. It doesn't explain how this happened. You will still understand later on why this is happening, but you don't see the moment. It's like it's skipping the points. Basically, what it's skipping is you going there, and suddenly someone's starting to chase you and shoot you. You know, it just feels like, it feels abrupt. You know, you're in your room in the city, and suddenly you appear in the forest, injured. On top of that, you're already shot. You know, you don't even get that part, and you're just running for your life, and there's a hunter with dogs trying to catch up to you, taunting you, mocking you, and trying to kill you for sport, essentially. So this skip, it's probably for budget reasons. They didn't want to animate stuff and make complicated cutscenes. All the cutscenes are actually very primitive in terms of what's happening. They do talk and stuff, but you know, actually action cutscenes, there are none. Now, you get this loading screen between different parts of the city where you travel, which is in the carriage. Now, luckily, you can just turn this off. I did, so I found no point to it, because it basically encourages you to look through your textbook and analyze the case and stuff while this is happening. But I see no point to that, and then that's the one thing that is another pretty major criticism, is loading screens. You're gonna be seeing them often, and unfortunately, they're not too long. They're fairly short, but as I said, unfortunately, you get to see too many of them. And another thing that you will notice with them is that oftentimes you need to go back to your flat and analyze something, and then immediately you need to go back to Scotland Yard, for example, and analyze something there. So essentially what is happening is you just see loading screen, 30 seconds gameplay, loading screen, 30 seconds gameplay, sometimes, not always, but there will be these times. Okay, so I also found something very unpleasant, was the screen tearing. So if you don't use VSync, your screen is gonna tear like crazy. So that means that you have to cap your frame rate at a certain number. It's not the end of the world, but definitely was not something that I enjoyed. And the thing is that the game also doesn't teach you about some of the mechanics. This game has fast travel, but at the beginning it tells you to go to a cabbie, which is basically a carriage, and ask him to drive you somewhere. And at first you assume that you have to do this every time you want to travel between places, and just by random chance I tried looking at my notebook, I saw the destination, I just clicked on it, and suddenly I teleported. This is never explained. So I've been actually traveling from place to place in a very unproductive way for, let's say, the first 1/5 of the game. It isn't that much, but why didn't they just explain this? I imagine some people might not even get it until later. Others will probably get it really fast. It all depends. But in any case, I think that they should have explained this. But alright, it's not so bad. But if someone never finds it out, he's gonna be padding his gameplay with walking from A to B, and this can increase the time a lot of playing. And this is kind of boring. This was something that I actually was pissed about at first, and I thought it's absolute bullshit until I found out that you don't have to. Now you can reach final conclusions fairly early because you are trying to investigate different cases and you're gathering evidence, and that sometimes the evidence actually already kind of turns you in one direction, and that is usually the wrong direction, so the game is kind of going to fool you into it. And if you do make a mistake, however, and that's the plus side on it, the game actually lets you replay that moment, so you're basically not losing your progress, you're just seeing an alternative ending and you can go for another one. So that's more a good thing than a bad thing, really, when you think about it. And the game gives you the chance to reconsider, so that's good. Now, another thing that I personally really hate in games is quick time events, and in some games the quick time events, of course, can be much worse than others, and they can be really challenging, which is actually, the word challenging sounds like something good, but actually for me challenging just is another word for really annoying and difficult. And here we don't have that, but we do have the quick time events where you gotta press like an idiot on your mouse 100 times to make something where you just bum, you have like to make a certain number of clicks for something to happen. This is something that I absolutely hate. Also, it makes me feel like I'm breaking my mouse over nothing. And there's Sherlock Holmes has a skill called imagination, which makes no sense. He's basically breaking all kinds of rules in the game because he can see in the past and the future. He can use it to guess things based on information he doesn't have in any way. So it feels like a superpower where there shouldn't be one, perhaps. I mean, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a mechanic of this sort, but they could have made it a little bit different at times. It really goes way over the top, and it just shows him way too much. They could have gone with much less. You essentially see what happened straight up, and it could have been made something like in Arkham Asylum, where Batman's like assuming, and in later Batman instances they actually overdid that too, as well. But in the previous ones at the beginning, the whole investigation part was done minimalistically, but it gave you information you needed. But that's a subjective thing, and it's really nitpicking on my end. It's definitely not something where I would say that's a huge problem. And that's pretty much it. These are the drawbacks of the game. It doesn't feel like it's much because it really isn't. But in all fairness, the game is not complex in the way it's played and the mechanics that go on through the game. So I'm going to talk about the good sides now. And the first thing I want to stress is the excellent voice acting. It really helps make the story more interesting, the characters more vibrant, and it just, pushes the story forward in a good way. Because this game at first feels cheap, but then when you see, you hear the voice acting and you pay attention to the story and the different ways it's, demonstrated through newspapers, documents you find, letters, all of this, it kind of helps. It makes the game seem more and more serious, and you become more and more blind to its lesser parts, to the parts that are not so interesting, that are actually pretty weak in the presentation, and you like it more. I already did mention that I did like the story, and I say this in pretty much every review, but a story can make or break a game. And this is one of those games where actually the game mechanics are, okay at best, really. This game feels a lot like the Telltale games, where essentially you're not even playing a real game. You're literally just going through a very pre-designed path where you have seeming choices where the game makes you feel like you're making a choice, but essentially the result's always the same. Here the only difference is that the cases and how you solve them in the end will have a minimal effect on what will happen in the last case, but it really is very small and insignificant, at least for me. So the story does really well here. It actually captivates you with each case. It becomes more interesting. You notice that there's something happening in the background, but they don't give it away, and then it all culminates in the last mission. And it's pretty good. It's not too bombastic, don't get me wrong. There are far better games out there with stories that will captivate you much better, like, for example, Soma. Soma is pretty much one of the best story-wise games that I've played in the recent 2 years at least. But this story is definitely very good. One thing that I really enjoyed is the fact that you actually get to switch characters with other ones and play as them and play through different segments of the game. And besides playing as Holmes and this little boy and stuff, you actually get to play as Sherlock Holmes' dog, which is a basset hound, sniffing around and barking, which entertains me. I love dogs, so, whenever there's a dog in a game, I feel like this is my dog, this is pretty cool, I like dogs. So give me a dog and watch me go. I'm always amused by that. The mini games are usually quick and quite entertaining. There are some QTEs in there, but all in all, the mini games are rarely overstay their welcome. For example, sometimes there are sneaking sections, which these sneaking sections feel a little bit too long at times. So they could have shortened them a little bit more, make him a little bit more snappy, but I understand that they didn't want the game to be too short, and actually the game isn't. I would say that it took me something around 7 to 8 hours to finish it, and I was really slow, taking my time, looking around, and as I said at the beginning, I was unaware of the fact that I could just fast travel at will from any location with one click. The game didn't tell me about this, so this is where I probably lost at least half an hour, if not more. And Holmes is young in this game, fairly young, he's not too young, but I like that he looks good. And you get to dress him up and change his disguises, and disguises can make him look horrible. I try to keep it always to a minimum, and make him look as attractive as possible, because when you play a game, you always see the character as kind of your image in the game world, and I'm not happy about seeing a really ugly, stupid character, although sometimes it works. In games like Kane and Lynch, for example, it was absolutely okay, or GTA 5, for example, or any GTA really. I can't remember the last time I played a GTA game and I got to play any kind of good-looking character. They all kind of look generic and mostly look like average guys from the street who are by no means attractive. So, but the Sherlock Holmes is, he's a good-looking man, he has lots of class, he has lots of style, and this whole Victorian England setting actually really works well. Presentation is pretty good, considering how limited their budget must have been. Simple yet interesting gameplay all in all. They did manage to bring a lot of different things that you can do while playing the game, so it doesn't feel like you're repeating the same things all the time. Like you will still be repeating a lot. You'll be questioning people, you'll be analyzing people, you'll be analyzing evidence and stuff, but it mixes it in with different puzzles and stuff, and that makes it better. Doesn't get boring, doesn't overstay its welcome. At least most of the time it doesn't. I think there were like 1 or 2 instances where I felt like I was not, enjoying something, but it was minimal. Now, the greatest thing about the puzzles is that they can be skipped, because some of them can be, usually they're not difficult, but some of them can be complex and require memorization and stuff, and I don't have the patience for that most of the time, and I could beat them, but I feel like I want to see what's going to happen, and this is just like something that slows me down too much, that's too annoying, so I oftentimes actually simply skip the puzzle, and this, if you ask me, is priceless, because they knew, we shouldn't force players who do not want to do this to do it. That's that simple. And it really works well, because some puzzles, sometimes I was like, yeah, I want to beat it, I'll try. And I tried for like 10 minutes a puzzle, I finally figured it out, I beat it, I feel satisfaction. But with other puzzles, when a puzzle is, you understand it, but it just is a bit, it requires too much memorization, or requires a little bit of luck, or something that you don't enjoy at the moment, you don't want to deal with it, and the game blocks you off. There is nothing more annoying than that. It's a bad analogy, but I remember Dark Souls with Sister Frida. It took me 6 hours to kill that bitch, and you have to consider 6 hours on one boss. It's not fun. This is not fun anymore. It's the last boss, you want to beat it so you're done with it, you feel like you don't want to give it up, and the game at this point is torture. So it's great when the game just offers you a chance to skip something, because it sucks. Okay, obviously it would be really shocking if we saw Dark Souls prompt, do you want to beat the boss? But quite honestly, it would have been cool if there was like, do you want us to make it a little bit easier? Although that would streamline the game and people would be like, oh no, Dark Souls has to be hard. But okay, I'm digressing, I'm talking about Dark Souls way too much. Let's get back to the Devil's Daughter. And, well, the game lets you replay the ending, as I mentioned before, but I mentioned it on the bad sides, and I really wanted to emphasize on this, because what most games will do is they will intentionally make you replay the whole game in order, or at least the whole case, in order to let you see what are the options you have. Here, the game straight out tells you this is a branching point. you can try all the options, and then it asks you, do you want to replay this branching point and choose differently? And not only that, but it also lets you see how many clues you've discovered. So, you know, if you haven't discovered all the clues, or if there's supposed to be 25 clues and you only have 12, that's a sign for you to know that this might even not be the final way to solve the case. And you might be totally off, which can happen several times. It's intention. And I think that's actually very well done. Earlier I mentioned as a negative, but it is only as far a negative as if you feel, if the game created in you the feeling like it's done and you shouldn't do anymore. And this does happen a few times because you just don't have another objective. You just have, this is it, you know, and you get to decide and you feel like there's nothing more. But then you see that you don't have all the clues collected, and then you might be allowed if you want to continue searching for clues. That happened to me once, and I just went back and found the problem and solved it, and it was great. So that's actually something that I really welcome, the sheer fact that you can replay from that last state. You don't need to save and load for it and stuff like that. The game straight out tells you there's another option, you want to see it before you decide, and then they ask you to finalize it. So there's pretty much nothing more to say about this game. Unfortunately, the game is fairly, you know, simplistic. Like I said, this was actually planned to be one of those shitty games reviews that I make for games that are with low budget and just horrible games altogether, because I actually was expecting this to be a bad game. And there's nothing better than sitting down to play a shitty game and realizing that this is actually not one and enjoying it. So I can recommend The Devil's Daughter, Sherlock Holmes. And I think that many of you will actually enjoy the game if you are, you know, if you want to give it a shot, if you want to try it. It's very interesting, it's captivating, it has a good story, and the gameplay is okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's not the best gameplay you're gonna find, and it's not that active either as gameplay, but it still feels much more of a game than, for example, a Telltale game. Those for me, they're not games really. It's like you're watching a movie and you're clicking next. That's essentially what's happening there. No, not only is there no challenge, I don't expect a Telltale game to make me shoot properly and stuff like that, but the choices and the actions that you make, they're unavoidable, you know, there's really no, like, you choose save this guy and you save him only to see him die 20 seconds later, you know. That's what happens in Telltale games. They really strictly predefine a path for you, and there is no getting out of this path. You can do nothing for it. In one part of the game, you're gonna chop your character's hand off, and then later on he's gonna die. So chopping his hand off early on makes no difference if he's dead anyway, you know what I mean? And with this game, you can actually miss things out and then not come to certain conclusions and not see a certain type of ending. So this actually means that you can end the case abruptly or right on time, but still get to the wrong conclusions because you gotta make decisions, which actually will have different effects. And a funny thing, after each case, you'll receive a letter from the people who were in this case, basically, and who you either got arrested and put in prison, or are free because you decide to show them mercy, something like that. And you'll receive a letter either threatening you or praising you, something to that effect, you know. So that's an interesting homage to the previous case. So I actually don't know if there are any other Sherlock Holmes games from this studio. I'm gonna check because I enjoyed it, and I can easily imagine playing another one if it offers at least this quality or better. That's pretty much it for this review. This is a short one, so to speak of, when compared to my other ones. But as I said, there's just not that much to talk about. In any case, I hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank you for watching it, and I hope you'll give a chance to my other reviews. Have a great day.